The thing about evil and the words of evil that are cast upon us in times of distress is that it can decrease our confidence and we can go into a reclusive mode of being insofar as we feel that it is necessary for us to do so because our presupposition to life is based on certain things in regard to faith. And so when that faith is challenged in a way where we ourselves are even beginning to doubt certain things, that's where you need to spend time with God, and prayer is going to be the battlefield for you. And sometimes in prayer and meditation, which I do distinguish the two, prayer is more of an active communion with God, whereas and the divine at large, but the meditation is more of a noticing of what it's like to exist as who you are, and the emergence of unconscious contents to allow themselves to surface to consciousness. And so last night I had a vision of a very peculiar thing. It was a bald eagle in the blatant hot desert, and there were bones everywhere, bones and bones of snakes everywhere, and it was a very distrusting sight. It was a very sorrowful sight, and it made me quite sad, and I wasn't sure why. And so I reached out to the eagle and I tried to commune with it, but it gave me this awkward look of shyness and deference. Well, maybe not deference, but more of it was more of a deterrent look. And it was something that just struck me very, very deeply to the core. And it began to fly away. And I didn't have any other vision that align with that. Sometimes the visions that I have are more elaborate. Sometimes they're just very brief, like this one. And the brief one like this, and when I do have visions like this where they're brief, there's usually a lot of emotions that are packed into this kind of vision. And there's a lot of messages to be told in this. And it seems to me that the bald eagle could represent a variety of different things. Well, God himself in the Bible seems to manifest himself in animals as two different kinds of animals, which is the bald eagle and the lion. That's why we call Jesus the Lion of Judah, right? So these different kinds of shocking qualities of visions where there's so much emotion packed into it, it can sometimes take a toll on the soul, and it can sometimes reemerge itself within the upcoming days to be something that is more profound to you than you could possibly have imagined beforehand. And the kinds of events that I see going on today in the world, as well as just in the lives of the people around me and in the communities that we have with the Regal Change Academy, I see there's a lot of shifting of mindsets and understanding that we're in a period where we are defeating the snakes in the desert. And it seems like we are completing a cycle of some kind. That's something else that I got the sense of. There's some kind of cycle being fulfilled, and there's some kind of quality of defeat of the enemy that is also there. This is very encouraging, but at the same time, the emotions stirred within me something that was very profound. It's like, well, now there's not anything to eat here, so we have to go somewhere else. and we have to fight somewhere else because there's nothing here in the desert. I mean, there was nothing in this vision. It was just a vast landscape. It was just this. It wasn't even sand. It was like really dry, kind of like if anybody's ever been to Arizona, where there's these flat lands that just seem to go on for miles and miles. In Vegas or Nevada area, like in between, like your drive from Utah to Vegas, there's this whole stretch where there's just this flat plain of desert where there's not even cacti or anything around. That's what it was like. And there was just tons of bones everywhere with snakes. And so it seems to me that we are entering this new phase, we are entering this new era, but I don't exactly understand, even myself, the emotions of the bald eagle. And it didn't necessarily seem like God was the eagle in this vision, but it seemed like it definitely had a divine quality to it. And I've had visions, full-on visions, where, I'm not sure if we're quite ready to talk about this kind of thing yet, but I'll go ahead and say this. So I've had full-on visions with what I call characters of the unconscious, and these visions have been they're very dramatic, and they're more quantifiable and qualifiable than they are anything else. There's really something to them, and it's almost as if these kinds of visions, and I'm not necessarily saying that you should participate in what do they call it in the New Age? Oh my gosh, I'm blanking on the term here, but the Jungians, the psychology of Jungian studies call it active imagination. Astral projection, that's the term I'm looking for. The New Agers call this astral projection. And this term has been around for quite a while. It's not necessarily the New Agers, but the New Agers believe that astral projection is a healthy form of this, and it's not entirely the case. And also, the Orthodox Church calls this the noetic realm. So I call this something else completely, which I will not disclose at this time, but I will disclose some of the things that I've seen and some of the things that I've heard and why this is important. But that's all that I will for now. That's going to be for another time. I've realized that sometimes dropping these kinds of truth bombs on people that are not necessarily ready for it can do more damage than good. And because even though I'm ready, like I mentioned this in a video I did yesterday, we're ready for the world. Like us chosen ones, us godly people, we're ready for the world. The world is just not ready for us. And this seems to be ever more prevalent, and there's this manifestation of this really taking place. And so when I do have these visions, though, I often go into meditation, and I often have a meditative state, which is not necessarily a prayerful state. There is a difference, and it's not necessarily to say that the meditative state is unholy, because there's a lot of Christians that misunderstand what meditation is, and there's a lot of Eastern religions and Eastern religious practitioners, rather, that misassociate and do not understand what prayer is and what prayer can actually do for you, and how prayer is not just a battlefield, okay, but prayer also sets up your walk with God. Whereas meditation, sometimes this can happen where the visions, for example, and active imaginations that you have can set up your walk with God. But I've also noticed that there's a very profound fact. What I call it is, it's almost like your quantum timeline jumping. And so if we are beings of light, which is what the Bible talks about and what Jesus even says, that God's people are like a light on a hill that cannot be dimmed. I don't think he says never be dimmed, but it's in Matthew after the Beatitudes of chapter 6. And so we're a light on the hill that cannot be dimmed. And well, what exactly does that mean? Well, it means that we are interdimensional beings. And so when you participate in active imagination, when you participate in this kind of behavior and this kind of skill, I think it's more of a skill than it is a behavior. And I think that it is a learned skill. It's a learned skill that you can have. It's not necessarily something that you can stumble into it. I know I did. The first time I ever had a vision was before COVID, actually. It was before COVID. And it was very frightening to me because I didn't exactly understand what was happening. I didn't understand what this was. It was really more like this stream of images that were completely mysterious to me, that were just appearing, and it made sense, but it wasn't, because it was almost as if I was acting out the drama, so to speak, before me in my mind and in my consciousness. And I wasn't quite sure whether or not that this was the best path, because, well, I've heard of people having visions before, but it's so abstract in our society that people think that it's this special thing. And now I don't necessarily see it as that. I don't necessarily see visions to be this mystical thing. It's actually very natural to the people that are in tune with their spirit. It's basically like dreaming, okay? Because we're always dreaming. We're always dreaming in some sense. At least that's the way that I view reality in some degree, because the dream that we dream together is what we call reality. I mean, what exactly else would be the past? How can the past allow there to be an objective reality and vice versa? How can there be an objective reality without the past? Well, it's the same kind of things that happen in our dreams. It's the same kind of thing that happens in these, I don't want to call them altered states of consciousness, because I don't necessarily think they're altered. I think that's a incorrect term to use, but it seems to me as though the shocking quality of these visions and these dreams are the exasperating magnificence that lays heavy on the soul of the person that is experiencing them. And so when we expand on these kinds of topics, we have to go into it with an extremely vast open mind and understand that the level in which we are articulating these kinds of things seems to be as if we were operating at high altitudes of thought. And in some sense we are, but in other senses it's actually very natural to the truly spiritual person. And so with all that being said, I hope this message was useful and insightful for you. I hope that it got you thinking about certain things, or just maybe got you interested in understanding the depths of your own psyche and your own mind. So with all that being said, I hope you all have a blessed night, and peace be with you all. Until next time.